Valentine's Day is around the corner, and it's time to level up your love. Join our 14-day Level Up Your Love Challenge and transform your relationship into a powerhouse of passion and connection. Each day, you'll receive exclusive tips, activities, and insights designed to deepen your bond and ignite the spark. Are you ready to take your love to the next level? Sign up now and make this Valentine's Day unforgettable. Sign up at AskNaomi.com.
And that's the disappointment when you fuck a guy for over an hour and he just go.
Did anybody recognize you from film in the industry? They did? Okay. Well, I just came in. You gotta do what you gotta do.
You are such an advocate. One thing is what I love is I love seeing a lot of the beautiful women that's in the industry as sex advocates.
And I would set up crystals on their body based off of their chakra. And the crystals, what they do is if they sit long enough, they begin to like permeate through the body. They begin to expand through the body and they create a bridge.
I shot with John Q too. You know, John Q, you know, I was the first big girl, but he did his thing, you know, his thing. Yeah. But
I would, and I have given my last dime to people. I've given when I should have just watched. And it's not always about giving financially. It's giving your space and your time and your energy.
So that's kind of like a 50-50 answer, what I got. That wasn't really a yes or no answer.
No, I think I actually would, and this is of course the therapist in me, I would be asking them, like, tell me how this is celibacy for you.
So what's first there, Anne?
I shoot them just like I would be shooting a regular female. So you don't put the emphasis on that, so it makes it more consistent with the title of being transgender
I have
woman.
a good friend. She lives here in Atlanta. I met her on a porn set. She wrote a book called From Porn to the Pulpit. Now, I won't say she was like this super... Yeah, she's my best friend. She's my best friend. Her name is Danielle Williams McCord. She wrote an amazing book called From Porn to the Pulpit. She's been preaching for 10 years now, but I met her on a porn set.
In any business that you find yourself in. Because definitely for me, like, you know, creating a product to push to the consumer, and for me, everything was consumer driven. If they didn't want it, I'm not gonna make it because I knew it.
Felt like if we kept our head a little below the sagebrush, that we would just be able to keep on going without any interference or anything like that. But you know, that's
right, dude. I'm sitting in like the dressing room, like just with all the 20-year-olds and 22-year-olds, 25-year-olds. I'm like, how old are you? Oh, I'm 25. I'm like, how old are you? I'm 23. And I'm like, dude, I'm 30.
Before I leave the house, I feel like the last look. You know, this is how I feel, this is what I'm thinking, you know. Now, when I get out and interact with other people, it's going to be what it is.
Right, okay.
Welcome to a podcast like no other. Get ready for insightful conversations, diverse perspectives, and a touch of inspiration. This is Ask Naomi, Bridging the Gap podcast. Join your host, the dynamic Naomi Banks, as she delves into the heart of various topics with a refreshing blend of curiosity and wisdom. Each week, tune in as Naomi is joined by special guests who bring their unique stories and expertise to the table. It's a journey of discovery, learning, and growth. And let's not forget about the one and only dog pound Mike, adding his flavor and flair to the mix. Together, they make a dynamic duo you won't want to miss. From thought-provoking discussions to moments of laughter and joy, Ask Naomi, Bridging the Gap podcast offers a space where great topics meet amazing guests. So, mark your calendars, set your reminders, and prepare to be entertained and enlightened. Join Naomi Banks and Dog Pound Mike Weekly for an unforgettable podcast experience. Get ready to bridge the gap, expand your horizons, and immerse yourself in the world of Ask Naomi. Subscribe now and stay tuned for a podcast journey like no other.
Another episode of Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. This is where we talk about love, sex, relationship, culture differences, and so much more while bridging the gap between them all and teaching the world on sex, love, language, and attitude. Well, today we will be diving into something deep in the world of relationships, personal growth, and the art of love and connection. Today we are exploring a topic that's becoming increasingly visible in the world of relationships, and that is ethical non-monogamy, or what we would call ENM. It's a way of loving and connecting that prioritizes trust, communication, and intentional choices. And to help us to unpack this topic, we have a very special guest, Ms. Lauren Hayes. Lauren is a renowned relationship editor, educator, and author of For Better or Even Better, 7 Lessons on Love Life from a Non-Monogamist. She also has an exciting new book on the way, What Monogamists Can Learn from Non-Monogamists. And yes, so what we're going to do is, before we bring Lauren to the stage, let's take a quick break. We come back and we're bringing her on because this is a hot topic, a very, very hot topic. All right, it's your girl, Goddess Naomi Banks here on Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. We'll be right back.
Valentine's Day is around the corner, and it's time to level up your love. Join our 14-day Level Up Your Love Challenge and transform your relationship into a powerhouse of passion and connection. Each day, you'll receive exclusive tips, activities, and insights designed to deepen your bond and ignite the spark. Are you ready to take your love to the next level? Sign up now and make this Valentine's Day unforgettable. Sign up at AskNaomi.com.
Washington Wellness Institute focuses on healing always. For me, if I look good, then I feel good. If I feel good, then I share the good. If I share the good, then I celebrate the good. If I celebrate the good, then I live the good. So I can be paid to be my greatest. But I have to learn the good to be the good.
So, what does it take to be the greatest? It's as simple as a free 15-minute consultation. Be kind to yourself and heal always.
All right, my beautiful people. Well, welcome back to Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap podcast. Well, hi, Miss Lauren. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about this conversation.
Oh, good. Me too.
Yeah, I'm truly excited about the conversation. You know, over the past quite a few years, it's been a lot with monogamy, what's it called? Polyamorous relationships have been like the total in crowd, the in thing that's been happening lately. But a lot of people truly don't understand what that is all about. So I am glad that you are here to give us the 411 on what it really is and how we can do it where it can be more relatable or more, I guess, ethical for our own relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has become very popular in the media. You're right. And so I don't know where you want to start, but I could just like kind of talk about how the kind of the definitions within ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah, you know, we can first draw from the world where you come from the ethical non-monogamy, and how has that, that's what I want to know first. How did that influence you as a work and as a writer?
Yeah, so this book is all the lessons that I have very personally learned in being ethically non-monogamous. And so it has more than influenced even my career, obviously, as a relationship coach. I was not a relationship coach before I was ethically non-monogamous. So this whole path has really taken me down. I think I was just very surprised by the personal growth and the relationship enhancement that came along with ethical non-monogamy and that I see happening to everyone else who's in it too, and the people that are practicing it in healthy ways. And I think that's really counterintuitive and surprising to a lot of people. So my book, For Better or Even Better, is really for monogamous and non-monogamous. It's the 7 love and life lessons that I learned through non-monogamy, but these lessons are very much for everybody.
So let me ask you this. Did you start off in non-monogamous relationships, or was you monogamy first and then went into a non-monogamous relationship?
I was always monogamous and married for 14 years before we started the conversation about being non-monogamous. So I have definitely experienced all the ways.
You know what? So I want to know. I know my listeners too will want to know. So we just play with me for a moment here.
Yes.
Just play with me for a moment here.
Yes.
How does that conversation look when you first bring that up? Who was it? Was it you or was it him? And how do you talk to your significant other about if you were in a monogamous relationship? How do we have that conversation to open up to a non-monogamous relationship? And what does it look like?
Yeah. So my husband is the one who brought it up. And by the way, there's a free guide on my website that I can tell you at the end of the show called How to Pop the E&M Question, because a lot of people do have this dilemma. They're like, it's something I'm curious about, but I'm afraid of bringing it up to my partner. Well, it's interesting that people are so afraid, and I understand why, because there are so many misconceptions about non-monogamy. And so I think when people hear that, their brains and their fears jump to it. And I had the same reaction as well. You know, I went into a place of, am I not enough, or are we not happy? Because I really thought we were happy, so that's confusing. And the way he brought it up was confusing and actually very good. So what he said one night was, so we had some knowledge of only polyamory. So E&M is the kind of broad term, ethical non-monogamy. Under that, there's polyamory, swinging, and everything in between. So we had only really known anything about polyamory just from some friends years back. And so one night he mentioned to me, I just feel like there's something more. And I knew he was talking about our relationship, but I was like, what does that mean? And he said, I don't actually know. And so we went through the, do you want a girlfriend? I don't think so. And we went through the, I'm not enough, and the, are we happy, for several days. And him just going, I don't know what more is. And so then we started exploring what more could mean. And we started exploring that together. So I was searching for like sex retreats and stuff like that. I don't know what he was searching on, but we were finding that because I was searching on sex retreats, I was getting a lot of like swinger resorts and stuff like that coming up. And so, next time we kind of convened, I'm like, is this what you're talking about? And he's like, I don't actually really know. Like, maybe that's what I'm talking about. I don't know. So finally, we found this book called The Ethical Slut. And it's a very well-known book. Kind of gives you not only kind of the how-tos, but also the what is it and what are the options. And so we started reading that together, chapter by chapter. We'd read it every week and discuss it. And even that process was super fun before we ever even knew if we would do anything. But it was just like we learned a lot about each other's fantasies, or my lack of fantasies, or all the things. And it was slow process of like, okay, well, I think we're gonna maybe try something. And we went to a swinger club and just took really small steps into it.
That's so interesting. So let me share this story. I remember the very first time that I experienced the whole swingers thing. I remember I came to California for an event. It was an event that I came to. And it was my very first time of even having a kiss from a woman of the same sex. So I didn't truly understand what that was. But then my body told me what that was, that was something that I guess I desire in my relationship. Not that I wanted to have a relationship, but that's something of a sexual urge that I had wanted, that I didn't know that I wanted, from there. And I
Yes.
remember myself and my partner at that moment, we started to have that conversation and talk about how we were going to do with our relationship and how it was going to go from there. And I know, like you said, a lot of times there's such a stigma on having a non-monogamous relationship and being in the swinger element, of it. For you, when you said how your husband came to you and had that conversation with you, as you said, a lot of women, we do, or even a lot of men, it's like, what's going on with me? Why is it me? For you, now that you know that it's not really you, and you going into, what was your experience like, as, okay, this is something new. Can I really, flag my freak flag? How
Yeah.
was that for you, knowing that society around family members or whatever will have judgment on you? So how was your experience going through that?
It was really interesting, slow. Like I said, we kind of took baby steps into things. We didn't tell anyone that we were doing that or even investigating that for a very long time. Because, and this happens to a lot of couples, when they're just exploring, they don't really know what they're doing, what they're becoming. Are we swingers? Are we going to be more polyamorous? There's like all these, they don't know. And so you don't have a strong identification with any of it yet. So you wouldn't even know what to tell people. Anyway. And then there's also all this stigma. So the E&M community, privacy is just really one of the values of the community. I would say polyamory has gained a lot more acceptance than the swinging side of things. Again, mostly because of all the misconceptions out there about all of these things. And so the polyamorous, I think, are paving our way. And I think because there's a lot more of them, they also have a bigger overlap with the LGBTQ community, I would say. But having said that, I will also say that's how a lot of people end up in swingland too, is somebody experimenting with their bisexual side that they are discovering, and their partner supporting them in that or being there with them in that. So there are so many different ways and models of people getting into this and how they get into this. And but it takes a little while to figure out your place in it.
Right.
And some people, they try it and they don't like it. Some people, there's so many different ways. Like you could just go to a sex club or a swinger club and just watch other people. Or you could just go to be watched if that's one of your sexual fantasies. Now, is your relationship really non-monogamous just because you're going to these clubs? I would say no. So that's, there's all these ideas of what a swinger is or what a swinging club would be, but it's very different than what people think.
Right. So let's back up just a little bit. Let's take a few steps back. And I know you wanted to say it before. So for my listeners who don't know or don't understand, what's the difference? What's the difference from the EMN to non-monogamous, monogamous relationship to polyamorous? So if you can explain what's the difference for each one of them so they can know exactly what we're talking about and be like, oh, okay, that's it.
Yes. Okay. So ethical non-monogamy, E&M, also called consensual non-monogamy, also called just open. Those are very broad umbrella terms. That means your relationship is non-monogamous to some degree. Then the two kind of camps, I like to call it, is the polyamorous camp. They're in it for love. They're in it for falling in love. They're in it for potentially multiple committed relationships. Then on the other camp is the swinging world, which also has kind of a nickname called the lifestyle. In that community, it's all about friendship. Yes, also about sex, can be. Not everybody does participate in the sexual part of swinging even. But it is more about friendship. So, not creating emotional bonds with people or committed emotional relationships.
What do you feel? You spoke about you talk about misconceptions.
Yeah.
What will be one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about this lifestyle?
There's so many. Okay, I think one if I can just say this first, the key party thing, it doesn't exist. There's this like myth out there of swingers having these key parties and people go in and throw their keys in a bowl and then they have sex with whoever key they draw. Does not exist. So I just want to eradicate that. I think if you want to talk about a club scene, I also think that people think you open the doors and you walk into this big orgy of like naked bodies everywhere and you are expected, and I'm going to go back to this term expected, to participate just by being there. Mm-hmm. And the reality is the clubs, most of them, the way that they're set up is that I call front of the house, dance club, bar, looks like any other club, except you might have some people in lingerie or a little bit more risque of clothing, or, you know, depending on the house rules, even a little bit more than that. Then what I call back of the house is where people will go to have sex. That's where you might want to be watched. So you can go to a particular area where people can watch if they want. There's also usually private rooms or curtains that you can close if you don't want people to watch you. Right. The very first time my husband and I went, we had sex in a private room by ourselves, closed door. We're like, it's already so amazing just to have sex in a sex club. Like, oh my God. So there's all kinds of options. And the other thing is, I think everyone thinks as soon as you step your foot in, there's some kind of expectation. That is everybody's concern, that there's some expectation of them. I don't know, to have sex, never. To, I don't know what they think the expectation is, but just participate in something. You're just showing up to a club. You have all the autonomy in the world and more autonomy and safety going on than I would say most regular clubs, because consent in our community is very important.
Yeah. You know, and amongst the couples too, they have rules amongst themselves, even when coming in, you know, a more of an understanding, coming into, you know, events like that. Like I said before, that's something that, you know, me and my husband, we used to do, you know, and we had some great experience and we had some not so great experience with it, you know, with it. But it was beneficial for us in our relationship because it did spice it up. Yeah. You know, in a moment, it spiced it up at times. And we knew that we ourselves had an open relationship to understand our communication and our trust within it. But it also allows to experience something else, either together or alone by ourselves, but with the consent of one another. So that was one thing that I loved about just being a part of that, you know, about that lifestyle. You know, now for our listeners, I would love for you to reflect on this. What does intentional love mean to you?
So I'm going to weave that into one of my soapboxes. One of my soapboxes is about conscious choice. So one of the things that, so we grew up, most of us have grown up in a monogamous culture. Yeah. So we didn't choose monogamy. We just did monogamy. We didn't know there were other choices, or those, I think to a lot of people, the choices don't seem like real choices. And so we just do monogamy. And I would say we actually don't even learn monogamy very well. But we just do it. That's the model that we know. So the one thing that I love about my work is spreading the word about what it really is, what it can be. And then if couples turn to each other and they say, you know, I don't think that's for me, and they agree on that, now they've just made a conscious choice into monogamy. Mm-hmm. This is very intentional. Then you can ask yourself the next question: are we doing monogamy well? Are you fulfilled? Am I fulfilled? Because this is one of the things that people in ethical non-monogamy, we talk about all the hard things so much more often. Mm-hmm. And so that also creates a lot of intention around work creating the relationship that we want to create, because now we're not operating inside the culture norms anymore. Right. So once we get out in this Wild West, what in the heck are we creating? Right. So there's a lot of power and intention in that. Two people creating what they want out of these experiences, what they want out of this community, what they want their lives to look like. And it's really beautiful to watch.
You know, thank you for that. I'm glad that you said all that. So now, listeners, that you heard her say what she thought about what intentional love mean. I want to know, what do you what does intentional love mean for you, our live audience right now? I see all of you BTG, so you can always you can put hashtag Ask Naomi Live, and you can definitely share with us what your thoughts are in that question there. All right, so Lauren,
Yeah.
your book includes a chapter titled Create Your Own Damn Life. And I love that title. Can you explain what that means and how it applies to relationships?
Yeah, it really follows. It's a perfect segue into this chapter. It follows what I was just saying, that, you know, this applies to everything in life. We grow up in our families. We learn, I'm going to put that in quotes, a lot how we operate in life, what we think we want out of life based on our families. Then when we leave, we kind of unlearn some of the things. We're like, you know what? I really don't even like some of the stuff that I was doing. You get to make all the choices, you know, what kind of relationship you want, what career you want, where you want to live. And I think a lot of people feel a lot of expectation from other people in their life, and they feel like they don't have all that freedom or choice. But ultimately, we do. And you can still choose those things.
Yeah.
But again, it's always that conscious choice. And so this happens very much in ethical non-monogamy because of, like I said, you're just stepping outside of the norms. But this really applies to all the areas of our life.
Yeah. So let's talk about emotional severity. That's something that you talk about in your book. What does that mean, and why is it so important in ethical non-monogamy?
Yeah. So it's actually ethical sovereignty. And sovereignty is a huge topic for everyone. And this was probably one of my biggest, well, I say that about every lesson. It was kind of my biggest lesson. But emotional sovereignty can probably best be defined with an example. So one way of saying, you made me feel jealous last night when I saw you dancing with that woman, is one way. The emotionally sovereign way that I would say that is, last night when I saw you dancing with that woman, I felt so jealous. So it's owning our own emotions. It is not blaming our partners or anyone else for how we feel, for making us feel, because technically no one can make us feel anyway. And so once we're standing in the place of I'm owning this emotion, if I say that to my partner, if I say, I felt really jealous, there is some space in that conversation for them to go, oh, really? Why? If I say, you made me jealous, that's immediate defense. It's like, no, I didn't. What are you talking about? What did I do? And so just creating that little bit of space by owning that emotion, and then a conversation can ensue. So the one thing I don't want people to think emotional sovereignty is, just because you're owning your own emotion doesn't mean you're alone with that emotion. So it is up to you to, like, what do I want to do with this emotion? Do I want to talk about it with my partner? Was it really actually like, wake up the next morning, it's not that big of a deal, I'm not going to bring it up? Is it something you want to talk to your therapist about or your best friend about? To certainly have your network of help around your emotions, but these are yours to own and work out. And it's actually not your partner's job to fix it.
That's interesting. That's you know, the one thing that I kept hearing, and it was loud to me, is right here, is that you definitely need great communication skills. You have to be not only a great listener, but have empathy and compassion for this right here. But it also, you know, I think about is that you have to have, you know, your self-esteem has to truly be intact. And what I mean is this, is that, are you doing this for the love of them, or are you truly doing this for yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So for the listeners that don't know, that are only listening to this, I am nodding emphatically, because that is the biggest lesson. That's chapter number 4, which is called Love Your Partner, but Love Yourself a Little Bit More. So ultimately, any kind of codependent tendencies, which, let me tell you, I have a lot of them, they will surface in ethical non-monogamy, because the stakes are higher. You don't want to be going out with people you don't want to be going out with. You certainly don't want to be having sex with people you don't want to be having sex with. So you're going to notice right away, you're like, oh, I have to speak up for myself. And even if, and this is a big one, even if it disappoints my partner, I still have to express myself. And these are lessons that, like I said, like they kind of get brought to the surface in ethical non-monogamy because of the extra emotional complexity that we're dealing with. But these are every relationship, monogamous or not, where you want to be self-expressing. You want to be sharing your feelings with your partner and feel supported in doing that. You want to be checking in with yourself first.
So let me ask you this. And I know for me and my partner, when we experienced that, we were lucky enough to have a group of people that, were like, okay, we're going to go experience that with you. For you and your husband and your partner, was there ever a moment where you felt alone that you didn't have anyone else to have that conversation with? And how do you go about finding a community of people that can be that support system for you in that moment?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I do what I do, because not only are people going through or exploring something that might bring up a lot of stuff for them or be challenging for them, then you don't want to tell anybody else you're doing it. So your usual network, your best friend, all of a sudden, maybe you're not talking to her about this. And so it's extra complex and you feel like you don't have anybody to talk to about it. So there are definitely professionals such as myself, but also the community. This is what I say all the time. People come for the sex and they stay for the community because we have each other's backs. Now, I'm going to explain it a little more ideally. Like, of course, nothing's perfect, but we have each other's backs. We all have been new before. So you can find a lot of support in the community. One thing that happened for us is on one of the dating sites, my husband listed that we were brand new. We had a couple reach out and say, hey, we're not really participating anymore in the community, but if you want to just meet for dinner and just ask us all the questions, we'd be happy to do that. And so they kind of became our mentors in this whole process, and it was invaluable. And I think a lot of people are doing that and paying that forward and reaching out to people, and because it is overwhelming and we all know it and we remember it.
Yeah. So I know one of the things that the biggest misconception is they want to know how safe is this, sexual-wise and, STDs, any of those things. How safe is this versus, regular life things?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. I don't know the stats, but what I will say is that I know because a lot of people are concerned about getting an STI, or there's an idea that this community must be rampant. Everybody that I know in this community tests on a regular basis and they use protection. So everyone has the same concerns. So everyone is protecting themselves. And by protecting yourself, you're also protecting others. Does it happen? Yes. It also, I don't know if it happens more or less often than in the the vanilla world. Vanilla is our term for anything non-lifestyle or non-E&M. But that is one of the primary concerns when people are going in. There's three primary concerns. One, we don't want to fuck up our relationship. Two, we don't want anybody else to know that we're thinking about this. And three, STIs. And those are just common fears, and people work through them at their own pace and into it.
Okay. Question. Well, actually, what advice would you give to a couple who is curious about exploring the ethical non-monogamy? What advice would you give to them?
Okay. First question I'm going to have for any couple is, where do you think your relationship is right now? Because the thing that we don't want to do is be using it to fix something that we think we're missing in our current relationship. And that conversation is really helpful because it doesn't mean you can't explore non-monogamy. It just means, oh, there's something that we both feel like is missing between us. So let's talk about that first. Let's solve that. And then maybe we consider ethical non-monogamy. For some reason, there's like people who are in very distressed relationships will sometimes think that opening up their relationship is a good idea. That's going to like fix something. It is not. It will probably speed up the demise of that relationship. So there is, I think that's also why we get a very bad name, because everyone knows that couple like, oh, they tried ethical non-monogamy and they were divorced within 6 months. Well, I'm always going to ask, well, what was the state of their relationship before they tried anything? And then my advice is always baby steps. Start on the internet, start reading things together. Just the little, like I call, the hot or not game. Like, do you think that's hot? Do you think that? And even if you never do anything, you learn something about your partner.
Yeah.
And it's just fun because I think there's a lot of unknowing in non-monogamy that happens as well, because when I say unknow, there's always like know your partner, but I like the term unknow your partner, like be willing to be surprised by your partner. And when you're talking about sexual fantasies and what they might think is hot, it's not as soon as you can get into a space of where it's not personal, you're not going to take their fantasy about somebody who looks completely opposite of you personally, then it's just fun to really, you're interested in that? Tell me more about that. And so it's just fun to get to know your partner better. And again.
When you said don't take it personal, like when you get out of that from taking it personal, and I'm like, okay, wow. When you really sit down and you and your spouse, your loved one or whatever, and you have this conversation and you say, okay, we want to do this. I want to be able to explore this, baby. Are you ready for this? Do you want to explore? And then you go through it. Then you get there. You get there and it's there and you feel something. It's like, what is happening here?
Like you're not feeling good about it, you mean?
Yeah. But you're not feeling good about it right now. So for those new ones that's new to the lifestyle, what are some of the common pitfalls to avoid so it won't be that? Ooh.
It might be that. And let me explain a little bit more. So when I say baby steps, the reason is because E&M is already just going to be outside of our comfort zones. Because like I said, we didn't grow up with this. We don't really know what the norms are. So we're just going to be outside our comfort zone. But we want to be just a little bit outside of our comfort zone, because if you get that feeling, I'm not sure about this, if you're just a little bit out of your comfort zone, you might try it again. And we have a kind of a funny phrase in the lifestyle, which is we'll try anything twice. Mm-hmm. So that is possible when you're operating a little bit outside of your comfort zone, and you can stay there as long as you want. Then you get comfortable. Maybe you do get comfortable there. Oh, I kind of like, I do like this. And then your comfort zone starts expanding. What can happen if you go take a big leap into something that you are not sure about and it doesn't go well? What actually happens is that you constrict. And so next time your comfort zone is actually much smaller. You have a lot more fear than even before. And so it really is important to figure out what your baby steps are and listen to yourself and trust yourself and just go. I mean, I know couples that have talked about becoming E&M for years before they do anything. There's no timeline. It's for you guys to create, So I think some people get concerned if they hear that their partner is curious, that there's going to be some expectation for them to do things that they don't want to do. But I think that's important to come at this with, it's important to come at this with like, this is for us and we're going to go at our pace. And also there are times, like what I mentioned, somebody maybe really feeling that it's important that they explore their bisexual side. I've discovered this part of me. I really want your support in this. And how can we make this work? Or if someone who feels that way with being polyamorous, I really feel that's really rocking a relationship, right? If you have a strong feeling about that. So I'm not saying you might not have a reason to push it for yourself a little bit more, but that is the thing to talk about, because that's why no one wants to bring it up, because we all have these misconceptions about what it is. Is it polyamory? Do you want to have a girlfriend? Do you want to have multiple relationships? Do you want, and we start when we don't know what our partner is thinking in that, and they might not even know. Like my husband didn't know, and so it's just, again, just pausing, communicating, talking. What does that mean for you? What do you think that means for us? And going from there.
Okay, thank you. So I posed a few questions this week. Just to ask if anyone had any questions for you and our listeners, and they do have a few. So I'm gonna ask you one of them. How do I approach my partner about wanting to explore E&M without hurting or scaring them?
I would say, and I alluded to this before, I think the important part is to set it up a little bit. Now, a mistake I will caution people not to do is they run out, they get curious about it, they go all this research, they read the books by themselves, they look at the website by themselves, they figure everything out because they feel like they have to have it all figured out to present it to their partner. That's actually the opposite. If you're just curious, invite your partner in to get curious with you. So if in one model you're like, hey, I heard about this E&M thing. I went and out did all this research, and here's all the things. And I think you would like this, and I would like that, and here's how we could do it, and we could go to this club and da-da-da. That is a very overwhelming conversation for the other partner. If you're like, hey, I heard a podcast about E&M, and I'm really curious about that. Now they might have a little freak out moment because of all the misconceptions about it. And it's really important to allow them to have their freak out moment about it. That's the first step in creating this emotional safety that you're going to create together by exploring something new. Is you can have whatever reaction you're going to have to it. I'm not going to react back. This isn't going to turn into a big thing. This is going to be like, wow, that was a really strong reaction. What is in that for you? And if it's a really strong reaction, you might be like, okay, let's take a break and not talk about this right now. But I do want to talk about this another time because I want to know what that strong reaction is about. Staying curious and not reacting is going to facilitate that process.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's some good advice right there. And for everyone that's listening, I want you to remember that you can always reach out with your questions for future episodes as well. Actually, you got time for us to open up the lines real quick, if we can?
Me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, my listeners, BTG crew, I know you guys have been a little quiet in there, just listening. We're going to open up the lines. You can give us a call at 626-605-2756. If you have any questions for Lauren Hayes, remember, we're going to keep those questions sexy and respectful, okay? As well as Dog Pound Mike has just put up a link as well up there too. For you, Lauren, please, while we wait for calls to come through, tell us, where can they find you at? Your website?
Yeah, the best place is probably my website. It's really my hub for everything, and it's swinginglifestylecoach.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I have webinars. I have free guides. I have a link to my book there. So it's really, and of course, my coaching program is on there. So that's really the best spot. But I go by the same name on Instagram and Facebook as well, which is Swinging Lifestyle Coach.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so we kind of low with the numbers today, but one thing is I want to thank you. I want to thank you for just coming out and sharing this great advice that you have, because like I said before, it's been a very popular thing lately, especially in the society. When you look on social media, you have so many different polyamorous clubs or, different things that happen from there, and just giving the knowledge and understanding of what it is. That's great. And I love how you broke it down as well, for our listeners. Any last words that you have for our listeners?
I guess just driving home that idea that, I'm not an advocate of everyone becoming non-monogamous. It's not for everyone, but I am an advocate of that conversation of like making that conscious choice into monogamy and choosing into your relationship and really creating the relationship of your dreams. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. To all of our listeners, whether you are curious about E&M or you're just sticking with monogamy, relationships are about intentions. It's about respect and it's about growth. Again, I want to thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week as we are. It's Valentine's Day. We got a nice little thing coming up, so we have more great guests coming in February. And as I always say, be good to one another in yourselves, and always keep it sexy. Have an amazing day.
Hey, it's the goddess Naomi Banks, and I hope you enjoyed that last episode of Ask Naomi Bridging the Gap. And if you did, please like, subscribe, press that notification button, as well as comment. I'll see you next week. Keep it sexy.
Ask Naomi, Bridging the Gap. This is where we talk about love, sex, relationship, cultural differences, and so much more.